Queen stays on top of things. She reads the newspapers, not just the Racing Post, the lot. She really does.
Good morning.
She listens to the radio and the evening news on television. And every day, wherever she may be, red cabinet boxes arrive, brimming with briefing documents and official government papers, and are carried to her through the corridors of the palace.
In these boxes have been some of the deepest secrets of the British state over the last 60 years, what they really thought in Whitehall during the most dangerous parts of the Cold War, when the world was on the edge of nuclear annihilation, what they really felt about some of the big domestic stories, those great confrontations. And the Queen really has had an absolute ringside seat for everything that's most important. They call her, in number 10, Reader Number 1.
Here is democracy's Reader Number 1, always ready for when the next box of documents arrives.
Why does she read those papers? Is it important that she sees the secrets of the state and knows what's going on?
If she's going to fulfil that function of keeping prime ministers and secretaries of state on their toes in her weekly meeting with the prime minister or the bilateral she regularly has with the big ministers, she's got to be well primed. And she has this enormous accumulated compost of memory and knowledge, but you have to keep it up to speed. I suspect it's her equivalent of athletic training. It's her workout.
I've heard it said that there are only 3 people in government who really truly understand what's going on. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, the Prime Minister and the Queen.
One of her former private secretaries, way back in the 70s, said that if she wasn't on top of all of this stuff, very quickly people would notice. Prime ministers, ministers, ambassadors, foreign would realise that she didn't know what was going on. And sort of something soggy and soft would happen at the apex of the state.
I think that's probably true, although, to be honest, quite a lot of the Queen's functions are almost rubber stamping. I think on a more personal level, if the Queen didn't keep up this great discipline of having to read every single day and keep on top of things, she might never be able to catch up again, or she would feel under pressure. And she has an iron discipline to read.
Iron discipline is, of course, a military quality, and the Queen grew up often surrounded by men with regimental instincts for timekeeping, order, dress code and duty. Responsibility was drummed into her. Her South African speech, aged 21, is the speech of a true believer in monarchy, nationhood, God and destiny.
There is a motto which has been borne by many of my ancestors, a noble motto: I serve. I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
So this is the woman who became Queen and who has never deviated from that oath. And as a figurehead for the monarchy, she is the most well-travelled monarch in history, with more than 325 overseas visits to more than 130 countries, going far beyond the 16 realms of which she's head of state, or the Commonwealth of which she is head. They include Russia, where revolutionaries killed her relative, Tsar Nicholas II, and communist China. Her impact around the world is a continuing story, even deep inside Republican territory.
If there's one place on the planet which challenges the idea of monarchy more than any other, it's the United States of America, the most successful democracy of all time. They didn't just reject monarchy, they rejected our monarchy and built a system with an elected leader whose powers are far greater than any king or queen has ever had. On the other hand, what they lost was continuity. They're always remaking themselves. The Queen remembers Eisenhower, J.F. Kennedy, Nixon, Reagan, Carter. And there's nobody at the apex of the United States you could say that about.
Here in the United States, you might think that nobody thinks much about that. You might think that in hard-boiled New York, people don't miss continuity or a sense of history. But you'd be wrong.
She's like an icon in the community. Like here in America, you don't really see as much females with her statue. So I think she has a great influence.
We love the Queen.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that she would be here.
High five.
Yeah, I know. I know, that's really cool she's coming here though.
She's here to make a speech at the United Nations, the organisation set up to promote world peace. It's a speech she's worked hard on. The 4 largest current providers of peacekeeping troops in the world are Commonwealth countries. She's head of state of 16 United Nations members, so this matters to her. The Queen makes speeches all the time, but she's not one of those people who like the sound of their own voice. She is pleased when the speeches are over.
In less than 2 hours' time, the Queen is going to be standing there addressing the United Nations. First time she's done it since 1957.
This assembly was born of the endeavors of countless men and women.
Back then, she was upbeat and optimistic, and so she will be today. You might say mostly her story has been the triumph of optimism and hope over bitter experience. But after all, that is the story of monarchy, and it's the story of the United Nations too.
It has perhaps always been the case that the waging of peace is the hardest form of leadership of all.
That was a really important speech, and she was able to go there and talk a lot about foreign policy aspects, talk about the successes that the UN has had and the issues that are still troubling it, about failed states. So, you know, she can do an enormous amount.
Grown and prospered by responding.
The Queen doesn't do trade deals. The Queen isn't actually herself soliciting business for the country. But the presence of the Queen draws enormous attention.
In tomorrow's world, we must all work together as hard as ever if we are truly to be United Nations.
She may not be a natural performer. She's never provocative, but she has found the right words for times of grief and crisis. And she moves people just by turning up, as she's about to do here in the last part of her New York visit at the site of the Twin Towers.
Ground Zero, nearly a decade on, and it's messy and dirty and busy and hot, and still very sad. Part of the job of a monarch is to articulate what people feel when tragedy strikes, when things go wrong. 67 British people died here among the nearly 3,000 who perished. And in the days afterwards, the Queen spoke very well. She spoke through the British ambassador just along the road at a church as the rain streaked down. And she said these were dark and harrowing times, and she finished by saying something which is simple and true, which is that grief is the price we pay for love. Now, so long afterwards, she's back. She's going to be laying a wreath. Prince Charles and Camilla have been here before, but she's never been here. And it's going to be, it'll be a poignant moment, actually.
Among those waiting for her is firefighter John Morabito, who survived the collapse of the South Tower. 411 emergency workers lost their lives as a result of the terrorist attacks.
Just to be able to meet the Queen and see her human side, that she would come down here and grace us with her presence at the World Trade Center site. I think it lifts the spirits of Americans, especially New Yorkers. There are times, especially in the fire department, we feel like the world kind of forgot about us and what we went through.
It's November 2010 in Abu Dhabi, and the Queen is in the Gulf. The colour of the carpet waiting for her never changes, but the world certainly does. When she became Queen, this place was in British hands, and it was mostly dust and camels and old forts. When she was last here, more than 30 years ago, this was an independent country on its way. And now it's one of the great mushrooming Jack and the Beanstalk economies, enormously powerful. It strikes me that this has become a place which matters an awful lot to, I mean, Manchester City fans, but also to a lot of workers as well in British homes.
It's not just the UAE; it's the whole region.
Yeah.
Hugely important from the business opportunities, the business case. There's an awful lot going on.
Yeah.
I've been coming to this region now for whatever it is, nearly 12 years.
Yes.
And developing the relationships, and this part of the world needs continuous hand and touch.
And personal contacts matter a lot.
Oh, hugely,
really,
hugely.
Yeah.
And the fact that Her Majesty's coming now is really, really important, especially after the new government has given and reinvigorated the relationship with the whole of the region. But as you can see, the aeroplane is rolling up now.
Yes,
back to work.
I mustn't keep them from the Queen.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Monarchies are a minority in today's world, but they're hardly unusual.